going to be kind of broken into two parts. The first half of the workshop, which the FLEO team will give, and each of them will talk about one integral concept of personal finance. We'll talk about personal finance, so we make sure everyone is at the same level of understanding, and everyone has those basic financial literacy skills. And once we establish that, we can go forward and we can talk about FinTech and kind of introduce that industry, because I know a lot of people might not know what FinTech is. And we can also talk about an application of FinTech, where if you're a good coder but you don't really know that much finance, this is a great place for you to get involved and make money potentially. So without further ado, I'm gonna give it off to Josh. And some of the stuff might seem a little basic to start off with, but I assure you, you'll see everything in a new light once we piece it together in the end. So we're gonna talk about the most integral piece in business. So yeah, take it away, Josh.
So we're going to be talking about compound interest. So compounding is a very integral part to business and finance. So if you can use compounding correctly, you will be able to be economically self-sufficient, as compounding against you. Okay, so let's start off by understanding what compounding is. Compounding, by definition, is the process in which an asset's earnings from either capital gains or interest. So compounding, therefore, is conducted with an interest rate in mind. It is very important to understand the difference between simple interest and compound interest. Whereas simple interest only calculates your money from your original value, compound interest calculates money from your most recent value. So that means that you'll be able to make a lot more profit using compound interest without doing a single thing. So how is this topic related to your everyday lives? Well, compound interest is used in a lot of things around you in your life. So compound interest, for example, is used as a benefit when you deposit money into a bank. It is also seen in 401k that you use for your retirement. It's also used commonly in your credit cards and your student loans. So if you can use compound interest, be able to skyrocket without you doing a single thing. So how do you calculate compound interest? Well, we use this formula, and I'm pretty sure you guys have seen this formula before. It's A equals P times 1 plus R over N to the power of N times T to the power of N times T, where A equals the final amount, P equals your starting amount or principal amount, R is your interest rate as a decimal, N is the number of times you're compounding per year, and T is the number of years you're compounding for. With this equation, you can calculate different aspects of your compounding plan just by solving for a variable. So although compounding may seem very beneficial to you, it has a lot of downside to it as well. A quote by Albert Einstein sums this idea up perfectly. Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. So just like how your profits can grow, they can skyrocket without even knowing, your debts and loans can also skyrocket as well. So credit card loans and student loans, if not paid off immediately, could skyrocket without even knowing. With one mistake, you could be swimming in a large pool of debt. So one way to avoid swimming in a large pool of debt like this is to pay off all your loans quickly so that you're to accumulate over time. So with that in mind, you will be able to grow your profits and become economically stable. So now let's do some practice problems. So in this example, it says that if $3,000 is placed in an account with an interest rate of 5% and is compounded quarterly, how much is the account at the end of 5 years? Well, for these problems, the math by itself is really, really simple. So all you have to do is find the variables. So in this case, your principal amount, starting amount, would be $3,000. Your interest rate as a decimal would be 0.05. Your value for N would be 4 because you're compounding quarterly. And the value for T would be 5 because you're compounding over 5 years. Now, since you have the variables, all you do these variables into the formula that we talked about before and get the value, the final amount being $3,846.11. Next slide. Now, for this problem, suppose you have a loan that is compounded at an interest rate of 6.9%. And an amount of $100,000. How much did you put in originally into the loan? So for this problem, instead of solving for A, the final amount, you'll be solving for P, the principal amount, because they only give you the final amount. So in this case, the final amount would be $100,000. Your interest rate would be 0.069. And since they did not specify the number of times you're compounding per year, we'll just assume that it's 1. So n equals 1, and you're compounding over a 10-year span. So t equals 10. Now you just plug this into a formula, and you get the value 51 cents. Now notice how this value is almost half what you owe now. Just how fast your compound interest can grow without even knowing. Use your money correctly with compound interest, you'll be able to manage your money.
So the goals of this part is to enable viewers and students to create a plan using the tools I provide in order to save up money and allocate it for future use. But ultimately, the main goal of this lesson is to teach viewers and students to become financially literate and responsible. Next slide, please. So what is money management exactly? When you search up the definition of money management, you get money management is a process of expense tracking, investing, budgeting, banking, and evaluating taxes of one's money, which is also called investment management. Money management is a strategic technique to make money yield the highest interest output value for any amount spent. As high school students and young adults, this may not be very useful without any prior financial knowledge. So can you go to the next slide, please? In reality, the definition of money management is the control of cash flow. It may also be referred to more narrowly as investment management or portfolio management. So being able to control cash flow in your life is basically controlling your wealth. You'll be able to avoid a lot of financial problems and wrong investments or credit decisions, and it'll help you reach your financial goals and save money for futures in case of disasters such as Corona. Next slide, please. So why am I stressing it so much right now? As you may know, Corona, well, there's actually a second wave of it. People thought it was going away, but the cases are getting even worse. I think there's close to 70,000 just yesterday. And scientists estimate that 42% of recent pandemic-induced layoffs are permanent job loss, meaning that those people will never get their jobs back and have to find a new one. And in such a bad time with drastic measures, I think it's necessary that young adults like you need these necessary financial skills to save money in order to just survive the quarantine. Next slide, please. So the first tool I'm going to be giving you guys is balance sheets, and is a tool used much more often in the corporate scene, meaning people like CFOs, maybe accountants, people like that. Or when you're an adult, you can use it, but it's basically used to report a company's individual liabilities, assets, and equity at a certain point in time, tracking the overall net worth and net income of the company, meaning net worth and net profit are how much money you're making, including expenses, costs, whatever it took to get to that point. And the net worth is including all your assets and the current cash you have at the time. All right, next slide. On the other hand, a budgeting plan is another tool that you guys can use in your daily life. It's focused on saving money rather than making records of cost and income. And it tracks much more simplistic day-to-day expenses such as groceries, gas, food. And it's a great tool that enables you to plan for future expenses and allocate your money to each category ahead of time. All right, next slide. So now we're talking about credit and debit. How many of you guys know what credit and debit are other than just credit and debit cards? You guys can put it in chat if you like. All right, so we have 2 people saying that they somewhat know it. Well, credit and debit are used in balance sheets and just tracking number and cash flow. And so debit's on the left-hand side of charts. As you can see, I have a chart, just an example on the bottom, and it represents an income or increase of wealth in the account, meaning you got a paycheck or you sold something and you gain money from that. And credit is the opposite. It's actually spending money or losing wealth within your account. So buying groceries, buying some other, maybe the PS5 coming out soon. And when you add the two, you get a negative from the credit, positive from the debit, and get overall net income, as I mentioned before, the balance sheets. Oh, next slide, please. So now we're talking about debit cards and credit cards. How many of you guys have those or know what they are? It's probably a good amount of people. All right, so we have Soham knows what it is. So debit cards, a lot of you guys probably have them or your parents let you use them. They're basically a set amount of money within a bank account that you can use. The pros of it is that it's much cheaper because you don't have to pay back the bank a certain amount of money with a rate on it. But the problem is that its security is a lot lower and you can't borrow money from the bank if you need it. You have to use whatever money you already have in your account, which is kind of a handicap to you. And on the other hand, credit cards allow the consumer to borrow money from the card issuers. And this means that whatever money the bank has is your money for the time being, as long as you can repay it with whatever rate they choose. And so that's a big problem with it. If you can't pay the money back with the rate, you shouldn't use credit cards. Just stick with debit cards. That's why a lot of young adults stick with debit cards rather than credit cards. But another pro for credit cards is that if you can pay back the money on time, it'll help build your credit score. So in the future, when you're looking to buy a house or maybe a car or take a big loan, your credit score will be high and the bank will see that you are actually a reliable person and they can lend their money to you. Yeah. Next slide.
Okay, so when it comes to financial literacy, investment is, all right, go ahead, ask your question.
So I think debit credit cards are very situational type things. As a young adult, if you have the resources to pay back whatever rate the bank charges, I think credit cards are definitely a better option. They offer higher security and you can build your credit score from a very young age. But debit cards seem a lot more feasible for young adults because parents can put a certain amount of money within the child's account and just control their spending. But if you are just trying to build your credit score and just work towards your future, I think credit cards are a good place to start.
Okay, so as I was saying before, when it comes to financial literacy, investment is one of the most important topics. However, it's also one of the most complicated ones. So how exactly does investment work? First of all, investment is defined as the act of allocating resources, usually money, with the expectation of generating an income or profit. There are many different forms of investing, from investing in the economy through the stock market to investing money in a particular company through loans. What matters most to us today is investing in the economy, which is often through the purchase of bonds and stocks or through various funds. A bond is a certificate issued by the government or a public company promising to repay borrowed money at a fixed rate of interest at a specific time, and a stock is a security that represents the ownership of a fraction of a corporation. These are two very different concepts, so make sure not to mix them up. If it helps, you can think of them as such. A bond means that the organization that issued it owes you money that is to be collected at a later date with interest, while a stock means that you own part of the organization that issued it. Alternatively, there's also mutual funds, which are professionally managed investment funds that pool money from many different investors to purchase securities. These securities vary depending on the type of fund. Mutual funds can invest in stocks, bonds, cash, or other commodities. Some funds even cover multiple categories in order to be more balanced. Here's a diagram of some of the various types of mutual funds. Even this doesn't cover everything, so I'm sure you can tell how complicated investment can be. Some important categories you might want to remember are index funds, target date funds, and exchange-traded funds, or ETFs. Index funds are portfolios created to imitate a financial market index such as the S&P 500. They contain stocks from all of the corporations in the market index in order to mirror the performance of the economy as a whole. Target date funds are funds that rebalance asset class weights over time so that it begins heavier to stocks when you're younger and heavier to bonds as you age. Both index funds and target date funds are considered useful for retirement. Exchange-traded funds are, like mutual funds, a collection of securities such as stocks. However, they differ in that ETFs are listed on stock exchanges and trade throughout the day, unlike mutual funds, which only trade once a day after the market is closed. You'll also want to know how safe an investment is. As a rule of thumb, here's a diagram of safety levels of various forms of investment. As you can see, individual stocks are the riskiest, but they also have the potential for the greatest reward. Alternatively, forms of investment such as savings accounts are the safest, but they have comparatively very little reward. What you decide to invest in depends on each person's situation and willingness to risk money. That's a decision you have to make for yourself. Now, if you do choose to invest in stocks, you also need to be able to read the history of the stock. Pictured here is Apple's stock chart for the past 5 years. The letters in the top left are what is known as a stock ticker, the symbol that represents each company, which for Apple is AAPL. The white number in the top right is the current price of each stock, which is pictured to be $318.19. And the red number next to it is how much that number has changed since the last market closure. In this application, red means that the stock has dropped that amount, while a green number means that it has gained that amount. The green line is a trend line. It marks the price of each stock at each point in time. If you can see, Apple stock has generally had an upward trend in value. For Apple, this is a good thing. One thing to be careful of when looking at charts is knowing what time range you're looking at. A single day, week, or even month is often not enough to tell how a company has been performing. Pictured here is the past 5 years, which gives a much better understanding of Apple's history. In addition, don't be too worried by sudden drops or gains in the stocks. Many factors can affect stock changes, such as changes in leadership, releases of new products, political events, and more. One example of this is the current COVID-19 pandemic, which has greatly dictated the course of the market over the past few months. If you can, try to see why the prices have changed as such. Knowing this will help you be able to better predict possible future changes. Here's a chart of Tesla stock over the past 5 years. Go ahead and give it a quick glance. Try to see if you can understand its changes. What's its general trend? Can you think of any reasons why its stock price behaved as such? If anyone has any ideas, just go ahead and post it in the chat. Anyone? Well, all right. Now that we've gone over the very that's right.
Go back, Agurm, so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
no, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so Swastik says Corona causing that drop, definitely. I think it's pretty interesting because oftentimes there's nothing that happens that typically dictates the course of entire markets. So when you invest, like Ajitesh mentioned, you want to diversify where you invest. You don't want to invest all in the same sector. But coronavirus is such a sweeping catastrophe that every industry experiences that same drop. And you'll actually notice that some companies and some stocks of some companies in particular experience that drop before other companies. So like Tesla's relatively early because so is Apple. Apple and Tesla received their dip relatively early because they both have a lot of factories in China. So you also need to think of a lot of modern day events and small factors that could affect the thing as a whole. And then Shashank says optimism about the future of the company. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not when we talk about this when we go over algo trading, but for people who manually trade or trade at their discretion, um, they 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 don't really trade based on like quantitative factors. They trade based on their personal feelings, and optimism is a big part. If they think the company is going somewhere, or if they just like the leader, the chances of them investing into that company is much higher. And Pranav says it was going up and down commonly, and then there's a big spike. Yeah, so up and down. I mean, Tesla's known to be a relatively a stock that fluctuates a lot. Wait, is that huge spike of 2020 because of the Cybertruck release, which tightened interest in the company? Yeah, it wasn't just the Cybertruck release. I believe also it was, I think the Semi, they updated some features on the Semi and they had like a lot more they had a lot more it released a lot of new cars. They also I think released they announced the Roadster again, which is the new brand Roadster. So there's a lot of, it's very reactionary. So if like there's a leak of new information, then there's people would be likely to invest or take out money accordingly. All right, if there's nothing else, we can go forward. Yep.
Okay, so now that we've gone over the very basics of investment, why does it matter to you? Why should you feel the need to invest at all? First of all, there are numerous ways to invest. There's almost certainly a method out there that suits your personal style. People often have a misconception that investment is for rich elites with vast amounts of money to spend. That is untrue. It's flexible enough that anyone who wants to can get involved in investment, no matter your level of wealth. Investment doesn't have to be a risky business if you don't want it to be. It's also a good way to get involved in the economy. The economy relies on investment and transactions in order to stay strong. By getting involved, you can contribute to the overall stability of the economy. You can also get personally involved with the industries that matter most to you. Your investments can help shape the future. In addition, investing early can provide long-term benefits. Planning for the future can be greatly impacted by your investment decisions made early on.
Okay, so now let's look into our future. Specifically, we're going to talk about college, which for many of us is in the near future. As many as 44.7 million Americans have student loan debt, according to a 2018 report by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. This means that roughly 1 in every 6 people over the age of 18 have student loan debt. Not only that, but more than $1.5 trillion in debt is owed. Let's go more in depth into what student loans are. Student loans are loans taken by students who are not able to pay for college completely. And like we've already talked about loans, students will have to pay it back with an interest. This means you'll end up paying the bank more money than you took from them. And with interest rates being 6% or higher, it's important not to take out more money than is necessary. So what are some ways of lowering the overall cost of going to college? One of the easiest ways to reduce the cost of going to college is through scholarships. Scholarships are financial aid rewards designed to help reduce the cost of college for students that have to pay for an undergraduate degree. Every year, $46 billion in scholarships are given out. Not only that, but there are multiple ways to get them. There are 7 common types of scholarships granted by organizations and colleges. These scholarships can be granted through academic achievement, community service, athletic achievement, your traits, your background, your financial need, or even your military affiliation. Scholarships aren't always awarded by just the college. Some programs and organizations also grant scholarships to students. Organizations can give scholarships in a number of ways. It can be granted through winning a competition or through personal achievements. One example of this is Coca-Cola, who has given out $66 million to help out students. While getting scholarships is one way, it's also important to remain frugal while you're in college. This means cutting spending from simple tasks such as commuting from your home to your college, or to more advanced tasks like creating a housing plan and a meal plan for the entire school year. It's always great to look for discounts when you shop and buy old and used books, as well as shopping for groceries. By doing these simple things, you can prevent yourself from getting trapped under a lengthy and expensive loan. Now let's look at life after college. Next slide, please. Although retirement is a long way away, it never hurts to start learning about it now. The most common type of plan is a 401k. A 401k is a plan normally offered to you by the company you work for, and its goal is to set aside money for retirement. This money comes from your paycheck and goes straight into a 401k account. You might ask, why is a 401k so important? Well, it's important because it helps you save money for retirement while also providing benefits along the way. For example, some companies may offer an incentive for investing money into a 401k. For example, for every dollar you put into a 401k, the company will match it with 25 cents. And another benefit is tax reduction. If you put money into your 401k, then the IRA will grant you a tax deduction on your adjusted gross income at the end of the year. This may be a little bit confusing, so let's take an example of this. Let's say you made $100,000 this year and you put $20,000 into your 401k. At the end of the year, you will only be taxed as if you earned $80,000 that year, which is a huge benefit because you're keeping a lot more money than you would if you didn't put any money into your 401k. Another bonus about a 401k is you can use this money to invest in the stock market or in bonds. And by investing into these stock market and bonds, you can get up to an 8% return annually. This means you'll have a constant flow of money even when you don't have a job. And remember, investing is not only about investing in the market, but is also about investing in your future.
All right. Just a quick question. Who here is ready, like planning on like going? I mean, obviously, I expect most people are planning on going to college, but who's planning on is like starting to think of ways that they're paying for college? If you type in the chat, might be too old, might be too young, but who's been thinking of ways? Because I think in our like a lot of the people here, like I know for the fact the FLEO team, a lot of us are planning on going to college in a year or two, and we're thinking about that. So definitely, it's a great thing to look into yourself, and I'm sure if you're not at that stage yet, you'll look into it yourself, and we can provide more resources if you need. So now that we have covered a basic understanding of personal finance, and we can understand the topics such as compounding, money management, investing, and planning for the future, that all goes towards understanding a new industry, which is FinTech. And I believe Bay Area Hacks is one of the only hackathons that actually offer this as a track. So I think this could be very beneficial if you're looking to operate in this track for the hackathon. So next slide, please. So as the name suggests, FinTech is essentially finance plus technology. It's in a sense the combination of these two sectors, and everything has to do with both of them. So it's not enough if you know finance and you don't know technology, it'll be hard for you to succeed in this industry. So I'm assuming most of you here at a hackathon know technology. So that's why we went over the financial backing so we can properly address this industry. Next slide, please. So the simple definition of FinTech is the automation of financial services. So financial services go from depositing a check in a bank, withdrawing money from an ATM, giving money to your friend, transferring money. So those financial services are all being moved online through technology. So it's the automation of that. And some examples are one, online banking. I'm sure all your parents or you all have used apps like Control Tower by Wells Fargo. There's Bank of America mobile. There's a mobile app. and that basically allows you to view your transactions from your phone. I mean, this is a concept that was like almost unimaginable 50, 60 years ago, but now it's a reality that our bank is in our front pocket. The next is payment services, and an example of that is Apple Pay, Venmo, PayPal, and these are this is like more peer-to-peer. So you have money and you transfer that to your friend or to your mom, and so it's kind of like, instead of giving a $20 note to Arnold, for example, I'd take out my phone and I'd send him $20. So that's all being done through a backend of technology, and that's what allows it to happen. The third thing is cryptocurrency. Not everybody might have heard of this, but a popular name associated with the cryptocurrency industry is Bitcoin. And cryptocurrency is basically it's a digitized currency that's decentralized. So like right now, the US dollar is controlled by the US government, but whereas Bitcoin is decentralized in the sense that I don't want to go too deep in it, but it's basically like there's no one body that controls it. It kind of belongs to the internet, and no one body can manipulate it. So it's, a lot of people see it as safer, but in the past few years, there's been a Bitcoin increase and a Bitcoin bust. So again, it's not as stable as the US dollar. And the fourth thing, which a lot of people don't associate with FinTech, are crowdfunding platforms. And I'm sure all of you here have heard of GoFundMe. And I mean, I know at FLEO, we rely on GoFundMe, I mean, to raise money for our organization, and a lot of nonprofits do. And GoFundMe is basically a platform where someone can see your initiative, read about your initiative, and donate how much ever they see fit. Right before the availability of FinTech, people might be going door to door saying, "Hey, this is our organization. Can you spare $20 or something like that?" Here, you can actually like promote it to people you've never met before, and that's the great thing about technology, that everyone who has access to it can access this industry. And we'll talk about how to be successful in this as well. So next slide, please. So the reason we're going over FinTech is sometimes it can seem kind of like, like a different industry. Like, why would we want to get involved in something like this? But it's not just about getting involved in FinTech. It's the part that it's already involved in our daily lives. Whether we see it or not, FinTech is everywhere around us. So just for an example, can someone name a company in the chat? Any company. That it doesn't have to be a FinTech company, just any company that they know of. Amazon. Okay, Amazon's a great example. Google is a great example. So let's use Amazon for our example. So when we go on Amazon, right? What is Amazon? Amazon is an e-commerce site, right? It's a place where we can go. It's an online marketplace, and we can buy things and get it delivered to our house. But actually, the backbone of Amazon is actually FinTech. The fact that you can enter your credit card information, just numbers on the back of your credit card, right? And save that information on the Amazon website. So the next time you go, all you do to buy a product and to purchase with a currency, all you do is click that credit card. That's all FinTech. And oftentimes we don't realize that. So it's everywhere. Like even Uber. I think Uber is a great example because nobody ever thinks of Uber and FinTech in the same light. But the fact that you can get in a taxi or get in a cab, and you can get out of the cab without giving any money to the driver, because it's all done through your phone. You don't even have to take out your phone, and you're done. It's one click on your phone, and not only have you got a ride to somewhere, but you've already paid that person. So it's everywhere around us. And currently it's one of the fastest growing industries. And this rapid growth allows for a lot of opportunity. So as you can see on the right here, this diagram, it says payments, financial research, insurance. These are all examples, and like the ones I mentioned earlier, of FinTech. But if you're an entrepreneur, or if you're someone who likes to capitalize on new ideas, this is definitely a great industry to look to do that, because whenever there's a rapid growth in the industry and there's things changing, there's opportunities created, and it's a great place for you to capitalize as an individual. So there's two aspects. So one of you succeeding, and then the other part of FinTech that's already in your life that you should understand, and then also understand how to use that to your advantage and make sure you're safe from stuff like online fraud, scamming, and all that kind of stuff. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about back please. Yeah, so now let's talk about an application of FinTech, and that's algorithmic trading. So you may or may not have, maybe put in the chat, how many people have heard of it or know what it is, perhaps? Does anyone know it? Okay, that's great. So algorithmic trading, in front of, like, as you might know, algorithmic trading is an application of FinTech. And the reason we've chosen this specific application is because it embodies the idea of integrating business with technology, right? It's a really good place, because algorithmic trading, next slide please, is essentially the use of code to execute investment strategies. So given that we're at a hackathon, I'm gonna make the assumption that everyone here knows basics of coding, and at least understands what coding is fundamentally. So oftentimes when we make a lab, right, we think of okay, we have an input, we have an output, and that's pretty similar in algorithmic trading, as you discover. So we're basically using this code to make purchases on the stock market, right? And that's how, and we'll talk about the benefits of that as well. And so something that's often used with algorithmic trading is the moving average. So the moving average is a statistical tool, which is a smooth indicator of stock trend based on past data points, right? So let's look at this image on the right. So the graph you see on top here, the one that goes with a lot of spikes, that is a traditional stock or bond line graph, right? And below it is the moving average. So you can, the first thing you notice between these two is that the moving average is a smooth line, right? So it's very beneficial, because if you were to code something that fluctuates a lot, it's hard to really pin down and execute what you want to. But with the moving average, it's easier to work with, because the numbers fluctuate by less while still representing the trend of data. And if the amount of days is smaller, then the moving average is more sensitive. So what that means essentially is that if you have 20 days, for example, the moving average will be more sensitive, because the events of that day have a greater impact on the moving average as a whole. Whereas if it's 200 days, for example, the events of the specific day are likely to have much less impact. So that's something to keep in mind when you're incorporating moving average, and we'll talk about how to incorporate that. So we have an example here. I think it cut off, but the example essentially says, if the 20-day moving average moves up by an X amount of points, then buy 50 shares. So immediately, given that we all have a basic programming understanding, that sounds like an if statement, and a lot of programming is if statement. So if the conditional, right, in the parentheses of Go encoding, if the conditional is met, then the body of code will be executed. And the body of code here would have the instructions that would buy the 50 shares, but it would have to go up by X points. So, and the moving average would be the input value. So if the 20-day moving average greater than X, then the body of shares would execute 50 shares. And obviously it's a little more complicated, but that's theoretically that's the principle behind it. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the benefits of algorithmic trading and versus manual or discretionary trading. So as I mentioned, I think earlier, manual and discretionary trading is essentially buying stocks as an individual based on what you know about the market or what you feel about a company. I think Shashank brought up the optimism of a company. So while the optimism of a company might play a big deal into discretionary trading, it has little to no effect in algorithmic trading. So the benefits of algorithmic trading is, one, it eliminates that optimism, right? It eliminates the emotion or bias. So we often have preconceived notions about specific entities or people or companies, and that leads us to often careless decision making because it's not vetted by logic or ration. Algorithmic trading also allows for constant monitoring. So when we're investing, oftentimes we think, okay, I'm gonna check the market in the afternoon and then tomorrow morning, right? And one, that takes a lot of time. So algorithmic trading, by its constant monitoring, it saves that time. But just the fact that you have a program constantly running at the duration of the stock market, as in the time that the stock market runs during the day, that's always looking at it. So everything that might affect your strategy is taken into account, and according changes are made. So that's something really powerful. That goes into the consistency of an algorithmic trading investment strategy, because no matter no matter if you're looking at the market or not, your program would have accounted for what happened and done an adjusted action. And it also enables the backtesting of strategies. So backtesting is essentially, it's checking the efficacy or effectiveness of a strategy through the use of historical data. So you can kind of think of backtesting as test code, right? Oftentimes we have to write test code and make up just to see if the input, if our code is taking the input correctly and the output and outputting the proper amount, right? But backtesting is using past data points. So like, for example, we're in 2020 today, and I've written algorithmic trading algorithmic code. I can go to 2018, for example, and take the June market, and put it now to see how my code would react with that, to see if it works. So it's basically a clever way of testing your code. And overall, the reduction of human error due to the reliance on code. It's not man versus machine. It's about man using machine to enable the highest possibility of success. So this is basically and algorithmic trading is not, it's not a fringe idea. It's not a few individuals, underground individuals who trade using algorithms. The 3 biggest hedge funds in the world use algorithmic tradings, and 86% of people of big like private equity firms and hedge funds incorporate at least aspects of algorithmic trading in their portfolios. Next slide, please. So there's 2 types of algorithms, and it could get a bit confusing here, so let me know if there's any questions. So the first one that I was alluding to earlier is a profit-seeking algorithm, and that's mainly used by individuals like us, right? Say I want to buy a company after it undergoes a merger and acquisition, right? That's my strategy. Every time a company undergoes a merger and acquisition, or let's use a better example. Let's say I want to buy a company every time the moving average is doubled, right? And I write a program that tracks all companies' moving averages, and if that doubles, my code will execute a buy order, right? That's a profit-seeking algorithm, and that's mainly used by individuals. On the other hand, an order-filling algorithm's goal is to buy small portions of a larger investment. So say, let's use an example. Let's say Josh Sai here, he is the CEO of a big hedge fund or a private equity firm, right? And and if you don't know, private equity firm, hedge fund, they're basically organizations that where you pool your money, you invest in them, and they manage like a big portfolio of like a lot of people's money. So say Josh has decided for his customers, he wants to buy Apple because he thinks Apple's going to go up. But given the sheer amount of his clientele, like the amount of people he has, he needs to buy 1 million shares of Apple, right? If he buys 1 million shares of Apple, he'll move the market, right? That's such a considerable amount. Like it's such a huge amount that it would actually impact the stock price of Apple, therefore making it more expensive for himself. Because the more you buy in a stock, the price will go up, right? Whereas if Aji here wants to buy 100 shares of Apple, right? Even if he just clicks buy, that's not going to move the market, because it's not in relation to Apple stock as a whole and its market capitalization, it's not large enough. So let's go back to Josh's example, right? Josh wants to buy 1 million shares of Apple, but he doesn't want to buy it immediately because that will move the market. So what Josh would do is he could write an algorithm that essentially says, okay, I have to buy 50 shares of Apple for the next, I don't know how many days, let's say 150, my math is probably off here, but let's say for 150 days, I'm going to buy 50 shares of Apple. So what that essentially does is in 150 days, he's done buying his 1 million shares or whatever, like assuming that equals to 1 million, he's done buying his 1 million shares, but he actually doesn't move the market in the sense that he's buying 50 per day. So it's not even making an impact on the market. So he's saving money because he's buying those 50 shares at relatively the same price. So that's very beneficial for someone, for big corporations especially. And the second example I have here, and VWAP, TWAP, and time slice are basically ways of types of order filling algorithms. So the other type of profit-seeking algorithm we've mentioned here is a predatory algorithm. And a predatory algorithm basically looks for people like Josh, right? My predatory algorithm would scan the market and look for people who are buying 50 shares of Apple, for example, per day, right? Once my predatory algorithm detects that, I realize that Josh is there's been a consistent investment of 50 shares of Apple per day. Therefore, my algorithm notices that and then invests like all my shares into Apple. Because if I know that Josh is going to buy 50 shares of Apple per day, right, then Apple price is slowly going to go up. and therefore I can make a lot of money by putting that money into Apple. So that's another reason you use order filling algorithms, is to make sure that people trying to capitalize off your big purchases don't do that. So you make more money and you don't lose money due to their actions. So any questions on that? Okay, or oh yeah, do you have any examples of softwares we can? Yeah. I believe that's the next slide, or the slide after the next one. Yeah, well, I'll go into that for sure. Let's make sure we finish on time. So I'll go a little bit faster, but let me know if you guys have questions. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk about steps to algorithmic trading. This is a pretty straightforward slide, so I'm gonna briefly go over it. So the first thing you want to do is no code involved. You want to think of your strategy, right? What is special about your strategy? And then you go to step 2, which is converting into code. So whatever your investment strategy is, you're going to translate that in a piece of code. It's the same thing you'd do in a comp sci. So in comp sci, like if you have an idea for a website, the first thing you do is like think it out, design it in your mind, design it on a piece of paper, and then you start coding it and start building it. Third is back testing. We already went over that. That's basically using historical data to see if your algorithm is working. Fourth is risk management. I'm not going to go too deep into this because of the time constraint, but that's essentially adding thresholds. So if a stock tanks, you still stay protected. So like it's kind of like a hard code end to your algorithm, just so you don't lose insane amounts of money if the market goes crazy, because it can go crazy. Fifth is simulating with real life data. So that's called paper trading. And on the next slide, I'll talk about platforms you can use that actually allow for simulating with real life data. And there's no money involved. So it's kind of like back testing, but you're putting your algorithm to the current day market. And the sixth thing is you want to start trading. Ensure to start slow and then scale. Because oftentimes when we write code, there's no money involved. We find it easy to go and just be like careless with our code. If it makes a mistake, worst case, the website crashes or the program crashes. But with money involved, you want to make sure that one, you're back testing, simulating with real life data, but you're starting slow to see if it's working, and then you can slowly increase it. And then throughout the process, you want to test your code and optimize. Testing your code, we already went over that. And optimizing your code is basically making your code as short and as short as possible and as fast as possible. When money's on the line, if you have a similar algorithm to someone, if your code is more optimized and it's faster, you can buy that faster and save maybe a couple cents. But over time, that makes a big difference. Next slide, please. So I'll briefly go over this one as well. So resources for algorithmic trading. We recommend Python because that's mainly used in resources like these three: Quantopian, QuantConnect, and QuantRocket. But you could also use C++, C#, and Java. And as I'm sure you guys know, if you know Python, it's not. I mean, if you know C++, C#, and Java, it's not too hard to understand Python. And Quantopian, QuantConnect, and QuantRocket all have live trading simulations. They allow for back testing, and they're all Python based. So we can give more information about that after. Next slide, please. Yeah. So we want to open up to questions. Sorry I have to rush a bit in the end, but we'd be more than happy to answer questions about anything we went over, or anything that you might know, and we can answer to the best of our abilities. Okay. When you say you adding limits, exactly. Yeah. So it's not. Swashik's question is when you say adding limits in implementing risk management, this is to cut your losses so that you don't lose as much money if your code does not work, right? So it's not just if your code doesn't work, right? A lot of times our code might work, but if the market moves drastically, sometimes there might be gray areas in our code. So I guess you could say it doesn't work, but basically it's just protecting because money's involved, right? You want to have as many limits as possible because that's a form of risk management, and then you can minimize your losses. Will this be available? Yeah, absolutely. I believe we'll put this on YouTube. Any other questions? We can just keep it open. If any of the organizers have questions too, we'd be more than happy to answer.
Yeah, so I can ask a question. So
For sure.
So why is it so, like, if we've been looking at like the Dow, it keeps going up like every day. Like some days it goes up by like thousands, but then the drop is like not as significant, but it keeps trending upwards. So why is that happening even if there are so many industries that are closed?
I think overall, and you'll see this even after like a war. Like, I mean, obviously COVID-19 isn't a war, but whenever there's a catastrophic event in an economy, I mean, the general trend of the stock market is to go up. right? I mean, no matter the 2001 bust, 2008 bust, the Great Depression, overall the stock market always increases. And a lot of the times, the stock market moves up for no reason because it's very reactionary. At the end of the day, while a lot of it is algorithms, right? There's a lot of people just sitting and like, hey, I want to invest in this because I think it's a good idea. And that's kind of what we also wanted to harp on in our workshop, that that's not the best investment strategy because it's not safe. It's not that it's not quantified, so it's not that safe. But as a general trend, the market does move up and down for no reason. So I mean, I can't give you I don't have like an exact answer because there is no perfect answer. Like the vaccine hasn't even been announced yet, and I'm sure once that's announced, it'll go up even more. But and I'm sure there's some industries that are definitely carrying. But yeah, I can give you a more detailed answer after if necessary. Audrey, you have anything? You have an answer to that?
No, you cover basically everything.
All right. Anything else? We're happy to answer any more questions. Do you have an alumni of people who used FinTech? When you say alumni, do you mean like people successful? Yeah. So a lot of people use FinTech, even though like that's not necessarily always what they're famous for. But like Warren Buffett, for example, he's a great, like when he started investing, FinTech wasn't even around. But now Berkshire Hathaway is one of the leading industries and they use FinTech. So there's a lot of people that use, and a lot of people, like especially richer people that have the money to have people like write code for them. You do use FinTech a lot because they're also managing larger portfolios of money. So they want to be as safe as possible. But I can guarantee you almost like I told you, right? The three biggest, 4 out of 5 of the biggest hedge funds and the top 3 included in that use biggest hedge funds in the world use FinTech. And that's a market of more than $1 billion. So individuals, there's not like one individual that comes to mind especially, but Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, all of them, most of the successful CEOs use investing for their algorithmic trading for their FinTech for their personal lives. We can keep answering questions, but we just go to the next slide real quick. Yeah, resources. So we have a lot of resources available for you guys. I know Amol mentioned the balance sheets and the budget planning. We have a lot of available resources, like courses we recommend to take. We can give you access to our workshop. We can give you access to the slides. We have more stuff from a curriculum standpoint. We do work with like specific content providers in the future, so we would recommend their specific courses. So if you send us like if you want like access to these slides, we can make it available. So just drop your email in the chat. And also, if you're interested in getting involved in FLEO, like I mentioned, it's been going on for about 1.5 years now, and we've been teaching workshops all over the world. We actually have, when I say all over the world, I mean virtually, but exclusively for students in a specific country. We have our first workshop for Indian students next week, I believe, and in 2 weeks, our first workshop for South Korean students. And where we teach workshops France, England. So definitely, if you're interested in FinTech and finance, drop your email to, or just say it in the chat and we can reach out to you and we can talk about how you can get involved. But I think that's pretty much it. If there's any other questions, we'd be more than happy to answer. We hope you guys enjoyed. We do have a feedback form. If you guys would like to fill it out, we'd greatly appreciate it. But I just want to thank Bay Area Hacks, not just for being such a dynamic hackathon that allows for industries like FinTech to be covered. A lot of the times, hackathons just say tech, coding. And great respect, a lot of respect for Sid, Kartik, the whole team for allowing us to speak and having FinTech as a track and providing such a great opportunity for all of you guys. So thank you guys so much for coming. If you have any more questions, we'd be more than happy to answer. And I believe Josh has put the feedback form in the chat. And we're just gonna, and I know for a fact the Bay Area Hacks team actually has a raffle prepared for you guys. So I'm excited to see who won, and good luck to all of you. So thank you guys for coming and good luck on your projects. You can let us know in the finance channel if you need any help with if you're choosing to do FinTech, and we can provide you with any resources, help, or guidance. We'd be more than happy to. But thank you guys so much. And our website, I'll put it in the chat as well, just if you guys want to visit it.